All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Very Dope Producers. This is episode 4, and I'm here with none other than Roving Jewel. RJ, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So how's the day going so far? You said you had some chores to do this morning. Get the dog up.
Yeah, walking the dogs, cleaning up after breakfast, all that. But we got it taken care of. It's all handled now. So my time is yours.
So you're in Sacramento.
Yes, sir.
All right. How are things right now over there, considering like opening up? I don't know where California is right now.
Yeah, things are opening back up. Still kind of like sparse eating in restaurants and all that. I don't know. It's kind of iffy whether that'll kind of stay open or not. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of a homebody anyway, for the most part. The only thing I really like to do is like go out and eat at nice restaurants every once in a while. So that's fine for me.
And then bring it back into the studio.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, so a lot of our audience may not be familiar with your work and the projects that you're working on. So I just want to start a little bit with just kind of like a quick bio. So can you just run me through, the elevator speech? Who is Roving Jewel?
um, Beat maker, producer, instrumentalist. I mean, for the most part, right now, I make a lot of hip hop, mostly boom bap influenced, with other little, you know, um, sonic influences from other genres. But for the most part, is boom bap, minus a dub reggae track I recently produced. But yeah, mostly hip hop. But I'm influenced and I love most genres of music.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of what my sound is. I'm not really like I don't really try to mold it or keep it very specific. Like whatever inspires me at the moment, that's kind of what's getting blended in there.
Nice. How long have you been producing?
Um, like seriously and trying to do it in a like a professional manner, maybe two plus years. But as far as
Yeah.
um, making beats probably since oh 05-ish, oh 04-ish, something like that. That's when I really got into it. But when I first kind of got my introduction into it, maybe 97 or 8.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of scattered, and I started playing guitar at I think 11 or something like that. Um,
Me too.
oh, oh, nice. So yeah, it's kind of just like scattered here and there, but I
Mhm.
really, started getting serious about it and trying to put stuff out at least for, posterity's sake, or, see how people would feel about it. And for my
Mhm.
own personal satisfaction past 2 years or so.
So the guitar was kind of like your introduction to music in general.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only instrument I played for a long time,
Hmm.
until I broke my wrist once, and then I broke my wrist again and had to have it reconstructed. So now my guitar playing is pretty sparse. I can only spend like so long and play certain things on it before my wrist will kind of start locking up, and I lose the mobility of it. But I still try to play as much as I can. The bass is a little bit easier because I don't have to play like any crazy chords or anything like that. It can just be, one or two fingers.
Yeah. So what type of music did you, I guess, start off with? I mean, I started playing when I was 11, and it was like, it was like rock. It was like Nirvana, like learning as much Nirvana as you
Same.
could.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
We're probably around the same time period.
mhm.
Um, my dad listened to a lot of like Pink Floyd and Allman Brothers and like things like that. So I got that kind of like influence, and
Yeah.
uh, I had back in the day, during the prime guitar playing years. I had Delta Blues albums and some
Yeah.
jazz albums, but yeah, mostly like like rock, like classic rock, and then grunge, and
Yeah.
back then. Now it's different. You can just look up tabs online or something. But I had a bunch of tab books, and I
Yeah.
would just learn out of those.
Guitar World magazine, Guitar Player,
Yeah.
all that. So yeah, and I think what's funny about the '90s too is like there was that resurgence of kind of like classic rock. You know what I mean? Like I remember there was a period where people were like started wearing bell bottoms again,
Yeah.
and
I mean, everything comes back around, and nothing's new under the sun.
so then that's awesome. Do you remember? I guess was there anything in terms of you're playing guitar and you're learning guitar? So like in 97, 98, you're introduced to beat making. In what form did that happen?
I used to go over to my friend Rec One's house, and he was like, I was into hip hop at the time, but he was making hip hop at the time. He was, making beats, he was MCing, he was DJing, like, everything.
Yeah.
And so that was, I was just at that point just listening to hip hop, just making mixtapes and stuff like that. And
Okay.
then I went over there, and he had back then, maybe I think it was maybe like a ASR or ASR 10 or something like that, and
Hmm.
sampling off of records, and he would make beats and whatever, and he kind of showed me like how to do stuff. So we'd go through records and pick out samples and stuff like that. So that was my first introduction into actually like making it. And then we pulled together our money and bought like I think it was like a 4-track Tascam,
Oh,
cassette
nice.
recorder, to make little beat tapes and whatnot.
And is that so? That was that in Sacramento too, or is that did you grow up somewhere
That
else?
was actually I grew up in the South. That was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Oh wow. Okay. And what was like the hip hop scene like back then, or even the music scene? Was there like a lot of musicians?
I really couldn't recall. I don't believe there was a great like hip hop. There was a few people making hip hop, but I mean, it's not like it's not like being in a metropolitan city or something where you have a gang of people. Like it's a very small town
Yeah.
and mostly a tourist town. So outside of the tourist times of the year is just like the main
Dead.
residents there, and there's
Yeah.
not that much going on. But I mean, there was more of maybe a rock scene and like a grunge scene because whenever I first started playing guitar, like I was in a band, and we did
Hmm.
shows and all that. So that
Yeah.
was before the beat making time. So it just kind of transformed to that, and then going over to Rex's house and making stuff with him.
That's fun. Did you have any, I guess, was there like formal guitar lessons or did you do anything in school that kind of brought you to like learn more traditional like theory or anything like that at any point?
No, I think I took lessons for maybe like 3 or 4 weeks. And then after that, it was all just me just learning out of tab books, listening, just trying to play, like mimic what I heard. I've never really been good at like taking lessons or being a very like structured student as far
Yeah.
as music goes. Um, so yeah, it was just me kind of, being a kid and having fun and, trying to just learn stuff. And yeah, that's about it.
So I knew we'd probably have like a guitar nerd uh section of this conversation, so we might as well get that out of the way. But
Right.
what type of guitars do you have right now?
Right. Like I used to have quite a few guitars. I used to have like a Gibson electric acoustic. I had a Fender Duosonic. Um, and my main guitar, which is like a re-edition, I believe 63 Fender Strat, and that's my main guitar. And it's still my main guitar. That's the only one I kept. I sold the other ones over time.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of lighten the load. I've moved around a lot until the last couple of years, so I had to try to keep my belongings a little bit
Yeah. more
pared
compact.
down.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Fender Strat is the main guitar, and that's never going anywhere. So that's the one I'm sticking with.
Is that guitar what is used the most in the 38th expansion?
Actually, I don't think there's any guitar that I played in that album. The album's mostly sample bass
Okay.
because I wanted it to be a kind of like homage or a throwback to the early to mid '90s. So I tried to, for the most part, and the blueprint of it, keep it aesthetically like that sample bass, try to sample, drum breaks, stuff like that, um, to give the bass foundation of it, and then kind of add my own little twist over top of it, and to make it a cohesive project.
Nice. That's amazing. I was gonna say some of the guitar stuff going on in there too is pretty cool. You could hear some samples in there in the back, I guess.
Yeah, there's some definitely, I tried to find some very saturated guitar. It's a kind of like minimalistic. It's kind of stuff I would like want to play in general, and it
Yeah.
kind of has like it's saturated, it has tons of effects on it.
Yeah.
Um, I can't play anything intricate anymore, so I tried to look for like stuff that I would play anyway. But
That's pretty sick.
yeah, I've been adding more guitar, kind of as I go along to some different things. Each project I plan on putting out is going to have kind of like a different aesthetic to it. So yeah, the 38th was kind of one, and I've been building on kind of what I learned through that, and and taking it to other projects and other things, and
Hmm.
adding to it.
Let's talk about some of your gear. And I think for beat makers and producers, they might kind of start with something in the very beginning, and over the years that kind of evolves. It gets either really big where you just have like tons of crap everywhere, or I know a lot of people that I associate with, they have shut it down to like two or three main things.
Yeah.
um, can you tell me a little bit about maybe some of the gear that you started using back in '04, '05 when you started off,
Um,
and then walk me through where you are now?
So I think '04 and '05, I started making stuff with GarageBand. That was the only thing I had at the time. Was I had a brand new computer and I had GarageBand on it, and I was like, ooh, like I can make stuff with this. And then shortly after that, I was browsing on Craigslist and found a MPC 2000 XL for a very competitive price. So I went and grabbed that up. I drove, 2 hours to San Francisco to go grab it. And yeah, that was like, I was sold off of that. And, I would stay up, to the wee hours of the morning, making beats, learning how to use it. And I don't think I even haven't had a manual with it or anything.
Hmm.
It was just kind of trial and error, so then it was just the MPC and a record player, and that's kind of what most of my early formal beat making training was done on. Um, and later on, I sold it because I needed some money at the time, and it was one of my life's big regrets. Like usually, I'm pretty good with like parting with things, and I don't really care about it. But that one, I was
Yeah.
always like, man, like I really shouldn't have sold that.
Yeah.
So like 3 or so years ago, I found a 1000 that was for sale. That was really good price, brand new. I got that. And ever since then, it's, been a daily assault on it. So then I sold that one and upgraded to the 2500. So that's my main hub and production center, um, the 2500. And I did some nice upgrades on it to make it aesthetically pleasing. Got the got the black fat pads on it. Installed the black LCD screen and all the black buttons and all that. So it's like kind of like blacked out.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, I have a Cord Triton. I have a micro Korg and a bass. Fender bass, and a Fender Strat. And that's kind of the main things that are being used right now. Oh, and Mr. Theremin back there.
Yes. And you mentioned we spoke on our 3BL show, and you mentioned that the sax is next, right? Is that what's on the
Oh yeah,
list?
I did purchase a sax. I've been kind of dabbling with that. Haven't quite been practicing that much lately. Like I got too much stuff to kind of like work with right now, so
Yeah.
yeah, I need to be better with time management so I can get some daily practice in with everything. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you start trying to make something, and then it's just like you're focused in on one thing. Like, oh, like I got to get this sound. So you only end up working with like one or two things.
What what brought you to the sax, and what type of sax is it? Is a tenor, alto?
It is a tenor sax. I got the tenor sax because most of the people I tend to listen to, you know, Yusef Lateef, Pharoah Sanders, John Coltrane. Most of the jazz guys were tenor sax players.
Hmm.
Um, so I was kind of looking for one of those, and I'm a firm believer in Facebook Marketplace. I browse it all the time, so when I see something come up for a price that
Yeah.
I can do and can't miss, I'll go grab it. So yeah, I grabbed this up, and I've got it good now to where I can get really clean notes, um,
Nice.
at least over 2 octaves, and I gotta work and learn how to be more expressive with it,
Yeah.
but I can at least, I can get the clean notes and sound out of it now. So
That's that's it. You're halfway there, man.
yeah, yeah,
As soon as you
just
get that,
I just gotta put in the time.
as soon as the squeaks go away, then I think you're going in the
Yeah,
right
you're golden.
direction.
Yeah, there was definitely like a squeak, phase that I went through.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the projects that you've completed recently and some of the stuff that you're working on right now. So first off, this is just you know public service announcement to everybody who's watching this. Get out there, go on rovingjewel.bandcamp.com and cop this album because it is extra, extra, extra fire. There's 14 tracks, and as RJ just mentioned, he mainly made an album that is sample based, and it is sick. And the lineup of guest musicians or features is also amazing as well. I'm definitely going to be talking about some of these tracks. So RJ, let me know and let the people know, maybe before 38th expansion, some of the projects that you're working on, this album, if you could tell us just a little bit about what it took to put this together, and then let me know what you're working on next, or what's currently.
This album was definitely it was a whirlwind. Not only just making the beats and trying to make a cohesive project, but also making things that I thought would match the featured MC styles, but also kind of like pulling it together as a whole album. I didn't want it to kind of just be a bunch of mix match beats. I wanted it to, be a seamless listen from, beginning to end,
Hmm.
and be able to fit all the styles that were involved. Because I mean, a lot of them are, quite different,
Hmm.
MCs and content. Um, so it was kind of just, checking myself as I went along, and making sure that everything was, very cohesive, and maintain the integrity of the artist, and just kind of bringing it together as a whole. And of course, like it is always a challenge when you aren't in a space with whoever you're working with. So it's always emailing back and forth or texting or talking on the phone, checking up where everything stands.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was just kind of like a whirlwind and a scramble from beginning to end, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
How did this come to be in the beginning? Because I think, like, from a producer standpoint, did you just, this was your goal, like, hey, I need to make an album and this is the idea that I have? Or did you kind of look back and kind of look at all the beats that you had and said, and kicked yourself in the butt and said, hey, I should do something and work with artists on this idea?
Um, it was definitely not thought out from the beginning. My original intention was to make a kind of like maybe a half and half instrumental and feature album. So it was maybe gonna be like whatever, maybe four or five feature tracks on there and then the rest instrumental.
Hmm.
And once I started going and once people kept signing on, it just kind of grew from there. I didn't have a whole lot of beats for it to begin with. I only maybe had like one or maybe like 1 to 3 beats that I had started
Okay.
that all had, maybe like a similar feel to it. And the first person I pitched it to was Prodigal Son of Sons of Man.
Hmm.
And I had already been talking to Prodigal on some other stuff for a while, and he was down from the beginning. So I was like, oh, well, I got him. Like, I might as well, reach out to some other people. I think next I reached out to Ninth Prince from Killer Army.
Hmm.
And then I think Substantial and Killer Priest maybe was the next one. I was a huge Wu Tang fan growing up. Like all the affiliate projects, like I had everything that was in
Hmm.
the CD binder, you know. Um, and I always liked those projects and those guys. I like the underground feel. I like the content. So those were kind of like the first few that I contacted. And once the ball got rolling, I just kind of ran with it and just like if people responded and people were down with it, that's kind of how it went.
Yeah.
And for the most part, most people were down to work and sign on for the project once they heard who else had signed on and once they heard the beats that I sent. But I didn't, like you asked, I didn't have a whole lot of beats complete or finished for it. I was making beats for the most part for the individuals as I went along.
Hmm. So then at some point you're kind of like, wait, this is not going to be half feature and half, beats. This is a full feature album, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was riding the wave to the very end.
That's amazing. So, okay, so this is your project that came out late last year, right? This is released in late 2020.
Yeah, the album digitally and CDs, it came out very end of November, and then the vinyl. I think I got it in February or March, something like that. It
Yeah,
was held back due to COVID. So
right. And for the vinyl, are all pressings this beautiful?
yeah, I did. I didn't do any of just the black vinyl. I did 180 gram color splatter vinyl. I wanted it to be kind of like a collector's item.
Hmm.
I want it to be very aesthetically pleasing. From the sound to the packaging. I want it to be like, if I do it once, I'm going to do it right. So
Yeah, this is amazing. Look at that, man. That is so cool. All right, I got to get my hands on one of these because it's ridiculous. When you pull this joint out of your record collection, it must be played.
yeah, it's nice. It sounds good. Like I was like really taken aback whenever we got the test presses in, and I went over to my audio engineer's house, my friend Andrew Lozano, who actually co-produced and played guitar on the last track
The last
of the
track.
album.
Okay.
Um, you know, I just work out of my little bedroom. He has a whole studio, so
Right.
even though, throw it on his tables and like through all the big studio monitors and all that. And I was so impressed. Like I was like, man, like I never thought it was going to end up this good, but it sounded great.
Amazing. Awesome. So that's 30th expansion. What's next on the list? Are you currently in the process of creating something right now? I remember we were talking a little bit about this on the show.
Yeah, I have. I had a I kind of co-produced a EP for a guy named Octane. He and his partner Owns had a song on the 38th expansion, the Shaw Brothers. But Octane dropped an EP this year, and I co-produced that album. I think there's like 3 or 4 beats I have on it. So that dropped. Um, I have a song that I did with Andrew Lozano on his forthcoming album that's coming out, I think, in a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
What else am I working on? I did the Satori track for Skate Park that was in Thrasher magazine. Right now I'm working on I just started an EP that's going to have kind of like ambient and some synth influence in it. And I'm working on, I just started a project with one of the pianists for the San Francisco Ballet, and that one's probably gonna be maybe like a jazzy or a lo-fi or something type of influence, maybe EP or something like that. So kind of a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
working on right now, a little bit scattered, but trying to, hone it in a little bit and get some stuff finished.
What about the music videos for some of these tracks in 38th expansion? How did that come about?
Really, it was just like talking to Ninth and Prodigal. You know, um, this is my first time like really putting out a major project. So,
Mm-hmm.
the music video, even though it's not quite as a prevalent thing as it once was. I feel like I kind of grew up in, coming home and watching like Rap City, The Basement, and
Oh yeah.
all that, like trying to find out like what new albums were coming out, watching all the videos. But it's they were schooling me on. It's a good way to get kind of like presence of the album out there, and they were down to do it and work with me and get it done. And those are the first 2 official videos off the album. And yeah, the Prodigal one just dropped like 2 weeks ago and came out really good.
Were you a part of there on filming day, or how did that go down?
Nah, because Prodigal, he's based in LA right now. He drove out to Las Vegas to do it. So yeah, I wasn't there. Him and the guy who shot it and edited, I think they just did like a day, trip to the Las Vegas desert or whatever and
Right.
shot it. So yeah, everything's still working very remotely for me. He
Yeah.
just kind of told me about like the video treatment he wrote up for it, and then kind of like the ideas he had for it. And uh, he was he wrote the song, he was the mastermind behind the lyrics. It sounded like a great idea what he had going, and it ended up coming out great. So
Yeah. It's both videos are pretty sweet. I want to talk a little bit about the album, and I kind of pointed out in an earlier conversation a couple of tracks that to me I think are just super super dope. And I mean, there's a lot on the album that's amazing. I could kind of go down a list because I actually have a list of stuff that's just like that stands out from like a production standpoint too, and like a beat maker's perspective.
yeah, maybe you can give me notes, because I don't like I'll hear people talk about the album, or I've seen some reviews, but as far as just like an instrumental standpoint, like, oh, the beat's tight, but that's usually all I really all I really hear about it.
It's funny because the more that you learn about how someone puts something together, the more that I feel that I can connect with certain types of music, even tracks that like I don't really think about, and just I might kind of fast forward as someone tells me the story about what was on their mind or what they did to make that track happen. The more that I find myself like stopping and listening onto some of those tracks. So I can't wait to hear more about some of these tracks. So the first one I want to talk about is is Infiltration featuring Casual.
Casual, Roving Jewel. Check it out. The FBI said the KKK infiltrated NYPD and didn't do shit. Wrote a rap but still speechless over grotesque armed protests at the beaches. What our teachers teach us is egregious. We be preaching peace because we need it. The FBI said the KKK infiltrated the OPD and didn't do shit. Harriet was supposed to be on a check and George Floyd wasn't supposed to have a...
All right, so right away, I'm just gonna kind of name a couple of things that stand out to me that I think are dope. It's just, and I always like talking to producers about swing. And I actually pulled up an example. That's what you see on my screen right now, is just listening to this part of the beat here, right?
Wrote a rap but still speechless over grotesque armed protests at the beaches.
I kind of like went ahead and said, you know what, let me try to play this really quick. So I made my version of that, right? And specifically, when you look at the drums, I'm pulling up Logic right here. So I'm kind of breaking down how this beat looks a little bit. The things that I love to hear is like when a producer is like, when I listen to that, I think, okay, this was made on an MPC, right? This is made on some piece of hardware. Do you, when you're just thinking about the drums, like the bass and the snare, or the kick and the snare or whatever, are you playing that out, or how do you go about developing something like that?
This one was actually, it's weird because whenever you listen to it, you hear just like played out, kind of like drum beat or whatever, but it's actually, I believe this and the theme was 3 layered things, and that's what gives it most of the swing, because just the kick and the snare, I mean, they had slight swing to it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as crazy as it sounds when you listen to it by itself.
Yeah.
It was some things that I used with this album that I've never used before was some, like, I found little pieces in some royalty-free sample packs of like folly loops and
Okay.
top loop textures or something like that. So I would find the structure of the theme and this one, as far as the percussion, were very similar. Mm-hmm. They were very sparse, like 2 or 4 bar drum loops that almost had like an inaudible hi-hat to it, except for like the open hat.
Yeah.
And then I laid the percussion and the foley over it and kind of, moved it slightly forward. So especially this one, the swing I feel like you hear the most is like, there's like a crackle sound, like, and mm-hmm. I feel like that's where like a lot of the swing comes from in this beat. And that's because of like the foley that's mixed in on top of the drum loop and the other percussion.
Amazing. And like when I listen to it, I hear that kick. Like if I'm just going to play the track really quick, and I'm going to put a filter on it so we could almost just hear the kick and the snare together.
All right.
Or actually just like the kick drum is probably what we'll hear the most really right about now. And then I'll filter it again so we can hear some of the hi-hat you're talking about too. Here we go.
Wrote a rap but still speechless of a grotesque armed protest at the beach.
So the first thing is, this isn't, this is just something that kind of comes to my mind, is that, I kind of like just drew it out here on the screen. I'll show that to you right now really quick. But the kick drum is coming in on the 1, right? This is what you see right here on the mm-hmm. bottom left-hand part of your screen. Then we come in on the 3rd beat in the measure. And then right before the snare hits, snares on 2 and 4 here. Mm-hmm. But right before the snare hits, you can see how late that snare is. And this is what I would.
It's like a late ghost kick.
Yes.
and it's more felt than heard almost.
Yeah. And but that's what kind of gets your body moving, in my opinion. When I hear stuff like that, I've played with a lot of like live drummers and stuff like that. And, this is kind of how a drummer plays, you know what I mean? It's not stuck to the grid.
No,
It's not
it's
super
never very
contrasty.
rigid unless you're in like, I don't know, like a fast rock band or something like that. But I feel like people kind of forget about like the ghost kicks and the ghost hi-hats. Like, you can add a lot of presence to your track just by adding those things. So sometimes even if I'm like, I'm playing out whatever the percussion in total, not just using the sensitivity of the MPC pads.
Right.
I'll also program in like the same thing, but I'll do like a kick at like 90% volume or however they have it in there, and then I'll do one at maybe like 15 or 20.
Okay.
And you always like the ghost sounds in it add so much more presence, and I think some people leave those out a lot of times, and it makes the beat sound really like rigid.
So are you mainly playing like a sequence drum line like that on that MPC with your fingers, and then going back and programming some of those things in, like the volume level or the velocity level?
Usually I'll play. So this album was kind of like, I think maybe half and half or something. Some I played all the drums and percussion. Some I these two I think were both like 2 or 4 bar drum loops, like I said, and then with the added stuff layered over the top of it. So it kind of just depends on the track. I don't really have a set method in any effect of like when I go into something. I never do, like I have things that I'll kind of go back and lean on sometimes, but I never do like the same thing all the time.
Yeah. How do you feel about just in general, all of your tracks? Do you try to inject some form of like swing in general, or like more human type of feel to your drums? What is your viewpoint on that?
Yeah, definitely. Even if I record them I always keep a little bit of swing programmed into the MPC.
Okay. And does that go on a scale? Because I don't have an MPC, but does that go on a scale from like 0 to 100 in terms of like percentage?
Well, actually, I think it might start, I could be wrong. I haven't delved into the menu settings that much lately, but it at least goes from 50 to 100.
Okay.
I don't know if you can take it all the way down to 0 or whatnot.
Okay.
But even at 50, it's pretty like
prevalent
on the money for like the notes with just a slight bit. And then once I record it out, like especially with the snare, I never want the snare to be like right on the money. Like I usually end up like, taking it and moving it a slight bit. So it'll be like maybe like sit like right behind the line.
Okay, so you're bringing it more, in this example, you're bringing it more to the left, essentially, or you're hitting it
actually more to the right.
More to the right. Okay, so it's coming in a little late. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think if it's always right on the money, it just depending on the track, because if you want the song to sound aggressive, or have like tension, the snare doesn't need to be late. It needs to be like more like a driving, like right on the note. But if it's something like this, like the short little sample like had swing to it to begin with, so I tried to make the percussion fitted as well. Right.
Amazing. And so there's another element, and you already mentioned one of them. The one element is the hi-hats, which we'll look at in 1 second. But the bass too. I mean, when I hear a drum track, like the drum, I'll say like the actual drums, like the bass and the kick and stuff like that, has that little bit of like, okay, some stuff is swung and some of the snares are a little bit, late, I'll say. When the bass comes in and it accentuates that feel too, that's where like my ear starts perking up, because I'm like, oh, okay. And you could hear a little bit. I try to replay it too for you. No clue if those are the right notes.
That sounds pretty close.
Do you feel, is this purely just a feel thing for you? Is like you'll just groove on it playing the bass? And is that you on the bass?
No, this is actually not me. This is actually the sample. And what I did was I did the sample by itself, and then I did a low pass filter on the
Okay.
MPC and had just, the bass line
Just the
filtered
bass.
out to accentuate it. So yeah, what you hear is literally just a sample played and kind of split in two for the low end and then the mids and highs.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's, I would call that like more of like a, that's kind of like an old school technique, you know what I mean? But that's,
Yeah, because if I were to show you the sample by itself, like the bass didn't really, it wasn't too prevalent, but once you split it out, it definitely comes out and makes the track. It definitely kind of has like a bounce, and that's I was like what I do basically with the royalty free samples is basically kind of what all the older guys would do with records. Like I just like look through and look through and look through until I find what's gonna fit and accentuate whatever I'm using the best. At least with this album, that's kind of what I did from beginning to end. It was trying to keep the same mindset of how beats used to be made as far as their building the track,
yeah.
and adding on top of it kind of my little aesthetic and what I wanted the end to sound like.
I'm going to play this again and I'm going to try to accentuate the high end so we can listen to the hi-hats, because this is another element where I think like the push and pull of the kick and the snare, but then the way that the sample is playing off of it with the bass, amazing. And then the adding element of the hi-hat sample, here, I'll play it. So what I hear is almost like a triplet going on there.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think that was like one of the top loops for the hi-hats part, and then all like the little like crunchy stuff that's like the foley. So it's kind of like a hodgepodge of different percussion elements.
Yeah.
But it gives it like a cool swing to it, and it just doesn't sound like the general like
yeah. Yeah, those are, whenever I hear like an interesting hi-hat that is kind of a little bit splashy, it sounds a little bit more like a real drummer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those are like the elements that I really, really like. So, all right, we dissected Infiltration a little bit there.
Oh, and one of the coolest things, and it kind of is kind of the same way. The theme and the Infiltration, I think, are very similar as far as their construction. But I believe what makes Infiltration also theme is cool is because the sample used for the Infiltration is very like repetitive, right? It's just
yeah,
that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But then it's played, but still that's very simple. But there's also over the top. It sounds very synthy, but I think it was a very saturated guitar sample. And then they just had a bunch of like the tail end, the reverb and all that, and it just rang out.
Just
so you'll hear it. It's like it's almost like an ambient texture.
Yeah.
After the guitar fades away, and it's very long. It goes over like an 8-bar, like 4 to 8 bar, time frame, I think.
Yeah.
And you'll find that throughout this album. But it takes it from being like a very like, I don't know, like standard boom bap beat, and it gives it a more like longer and kind of dreamy feel.
Yes.
And you'll kind of get that from beginning to end. And I think that's what pulled a lot of the songs together, is I found a lot of things like that would kind of take it from being like just the very like boom, boom, down, like, like quintessential like boom bap feeling beat to make it more of like a longer running kind of flowy sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely the theme and infiltration both had those, because the theme has some like synth pads and stuff that kind of like run throughout them, and then infiltration had like the guitar synthy sounding thing that kind of like roamed throughout it.
Yeah, it made me like, I don't know, growing up, I loved Outkast. It kind of made me think of like AT some of that like groovy guitar work that was in that album a little bit.
I love what that organized what's their production group?
Noise.
Yeah, Organized Noise. Like they're
Yeah,
such an underrated, group of producers for me.
I know. And that's funny because when I listened to that like waviness, I thought that was like a either a synth, or I thought that was like a mellotron, like flute type of thing, maybe, that like you just affected really heavily because it has that, it's eerie sounding, like that tail end of that guitar reverb, but it's also gritty too, like almost
Yeah.
like it has like some of that saturation or distortion kind of in there too.
And another thing is almost everything, like I don't know if I overplay it sometime, but almost every beat in there, I took it, because sometimes I don't necessarily like the high end of things. So almost everything that goes into the MPC, I usually throw a low pass
Low
filter
pass.
on it, and
Yeah.
I take it down just a little bit, maybe
Okay.
like from 100 down to 90 or 85.
Okay.
And I think that also I did that with that guitar sample, and also I either used the MPC reverb on it, on that, and you'll hear like the little like dub whatever siren or whatever it was,
Yeah.
um, in the infiltration. And all this was also ran through the Roland SP 404. So some of the effects and the sounds in the album were also created by running it through there after it was coming out the MPC.
Do you hit any kind of like mixing issues if you have like you're taking a lot of the high end out of some of the samples, like when the audio engineer gets it in and it's being mixed, is there any kind of like traffic jam on the low end at all, or no?
He didn't. I mean, I kind of worked with him. Like, he's really good. For one, I have to shout him out because he's extremely knowledgeable. He lets me know what's going on. Really
Shout out
easy.
Andrew Lozano, right?
Yeah, Andrew Lozano. He has an album out called Conceptualize, that's extremely good, and he also has another album coming out which I'm going to have a track on with him. But all of my recent projects have been mixed and mastered by him. I really trust him for his ear and the sonics. But I try to do my best at getting the stuff to him as well recorded and clean as possible. And I try not to go overboard with things. Like, I don't want to, take so much off of it to where it's just all in one range. I try to, all the samples or the stuff I'm recording, like I try to fill out the stereo field at least like, a good bit. And I try to gain stage well to where he's not having to like, boost signals or, like, or I messed up all the headroom or whatever. So yeah, I try to be at least thoughtful of him beforehand, because but he's really quick with it. He can turn it around really quick, and he kind of knows like my sound that I want to achieve now. And so I can get to him, and he does a really good job. So I haven't had, really too many problems with running into like, what did you give me? Like,
what is this mess? That's like, sometimes I go overboard. Like, even, on our show, we're making a track a week, and sometimes like last minute, I'm like trying to mix my stuff down, and I'm just like slapping filters on and EQ and stuff. And then I kind of take a step back. I'm like, what did I just do? you can't hear everything's like muddy. I'm like, all right, I need to do less of all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't really trust myself, nor do I enjoy the whole like, mixing aspect that much. So I definitely lean on Andrew to bring it like to
Yeah.
that upper echelon level.
Yep.
My joy is in the creation of it.
Yeah.
I just do my best to try to pick things that's going to make a good mix in the end. Because
Yeah.
usually when I listen to it, even before I send it to him, I'm like, ah, like it sounds good already. He takes it from like here to here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's you kind of have to give it to the professionals to do their job, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't do
And
you can't be
no,
master
you
at
can't.
everything.
And I can't.
All right. And I do have a bunch of, I'm just going to quickly go through some of the great things about this album. You mentioned kind of like a cohesive idea, those vocal samples. Is that someone, singing the vocal samples?
Once again, royalty-free samples. They're actually leftover. I'd started a project with a friend that was going to be primarily centered around like different cultures of like chanting and
Mm-hmm.
kind of like stuff like that. And the project never really came to fruition. So I had all these like samples that I got. So I got a few that I liked, excuse me, and I started to weave them into it. And yeah, it just kind of worked out like that. For some reason, they're completely different, and people singing and samples, but they kind of they're the sound aesthetic of them work well, in unison throughout the album. So
Yeah, they kind of help tie like all the female vocalist part. It's like it's tying some of the whole feel of the album together. What about really quick about the songwriting aspect? How involved are you when you have an artist that wants to get involved, especially for this album? Is there a lot of, I guess, like conversation, brainstorming session about song ideas, hook ideas? Are you listening to any rough draft mixes and kind of making comments and notes, or how does that come to be?
it kind of depended from song to song. For the most part, I asked the artist because I like their content and their songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So I trusted them in, giving me, a good product in the end.
Mm-hmm.
As far as writing the song, I'm not taking any credit for that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
purely I'm painting the little canvas, and
Yeah.
they're doing their stuff over the top of it. Um, a few people, I gave them the beats. They liked the way that they were, structured. I would kind of ask them in the beginning, before I'd make stuff, is there a tempo you like? Is there a certain, arrangement you would like? Stuff like that. And then I would kind of build it around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would try to, pick a sound or aesthetic that, would, match their sound, or what I thought would match their sound and their voice. Um, and some were just good as is. Some I worked with C.O.N-Vers. We kind of shortened the hook parts
Mm-hmm.
after we listened to a rough draft of his. Um, with Prodigal, we changed the beat a couple of times because he was like, yeah, like I wanna do like some verses, and I want to do the hook, and then I'm going to do the bridge, and like
Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of take the listeners on a ride. So the beat changed a few different times to accentuate how he was writing it.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the actual content and writing it, no, I didn't do anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. I was just arranging the songs kind of like how they wanted it and how it
Yeah.
fit the list.
Yeah, you're talking about target BPMs. That's huge. I mean, I kind of think about that because on our show we have a lyricist. He's like the in-house rapper on our crew, and he talks about like some BPMs that he loves. Did you find that was a thing with a lot of the artists that you worked with? They were kind of saying like, it has to be 93 BPM.
I mean, for the most part, whenever I started out, like a lot of those things I started making were like upper 80s to maybe around 95. So I think that wasn't a far stretch for most people. but yeah, like some of them were just like, I want it to be like a little, like I wanted to be a little like, of a higher pace, and then some were like, I don't want anything over 90 BPM, and like Planet Asia, like I was like, do you have a specific tempo you want? He's like, make it the same tempo. If he named some random song, I can't
Yeah.
remember what it was, but I pulled up the song. I think it was an LL Cool J song or something like that. And I just did the tap tempo on the MPC to that thing, and I made him three beats to that specific tempo. And I went and listened to one of his old albums, and I listened to a song that I really liked off of it, and it had like almost like a stand-up bass. That was like the main thing, the main aesthetic that you could hear over the whole beat. So that's what I found, a nice stand-up bass sample that I chopped up. I did that tempo, and then I kind of laid some stuff over it. I laid some pads, and I laid some of the singing or whatever. So I tried to like go and do like an homage to like like old songs that they did, and they might not have even picked it up, that I was going and doing.
You're going that way.
But, usually it worked out, because in that case, like I said to him, like, oh yeah, that's tight, I'm getting on it. So
yeah. That's amazing. Awesome. See, now that I know a little bit more of the insight on a lot of these songs, next time I listen to the album, I'm going to have even more enjoyment. Okay, cool. So what is your number one DAW of choice? Are you using a workstation at all?
I only use Logic. I'm becoming more proficient of it as time goes by. However, I am very I'll use the word remedial in my use of it. Like I first started using it just to record into it and do some like little snips and cuts and fade ins, fade outs. To give you a little background, all the time stretching, pitching, everything done on all my previous work was done on the MPC. I only learned how to time stretch and pitch up and down on Logic maybe a good 3 months ago. So that tells you my skill set range in Logic right now.
Well, I just have to say, Logic gang, Logic gang, Logic gang. It's great when you meet another Logic user. All right. Okay, you're on a stranded island, and you can only take one piece of hardware or software to make music. What are you bringing with you?
Man, I mean, I guess I have to take the MPC. That's kind of what I work with the most. From beginning to end, that's usually where I at least do the foundation of my stuff. What's the word I'm looking for? The way I'm kind of structuring songs and making stuff lately, I'm kind of like, I'm not doing it all in the MPC and then recording. I'm kind of doing it like do a little bit, record in, do a little bit, record in. So it's kind of changing over time, but still the MPC is the main, the hub of my production work, and I don't really see that changing.
Okay. Here's the next question. Quantization?
I'm for it. I don't think you should use it all the time with everything, but I am not one of those guys who are like, oh, like you gotta do everything unquantized. No, some things I like to be like very like regimented, and then some things I like to have swing on them. Like for instance, like I at least do like the first kicks quantized. They're always going to be like that. I might do some of the ghost kicks on quantize, or the snares, or I might do like every so and so bar of the hi-hats quantized, and then I'll do the ones in between them unquantized. So but I just don't I'm not completely against it, nor am I for having everything quantized. I don't know. I'm kind of middle of the road in that opinion, I guess.
808s or kicks?
I prefer kicks. I like live sounding drums. That goes back to my time, or the stuff that I grew up listening to, especially in hip hop. You know, most of those were sampling drum breaks, and that's kind of the sound that I like. I'm not against 808s. I just prefer a lot, you know, to have, you know, normal kicks. I like kind of like the gritty live drum sounds.
So do I. Loop kits?
I'm for them. You know, to me, loop kits are, you know, very similar to, you know, you find a break in a record, you know, you can go sample it and chop it up. Just don't throw the same, you know, don't go to a loop kit and throw all those samples in the same beat. Like, that's not really what it's for, you know. Take one little thing, sample it, you know, chop it, do whatever, you know, take something from somewhere else. Like, loop kits to me are, you know, just like sampling records. Just don't take, you don't want to take everything from one loop kit, because that means you're just sampling the same song over and over, and you're going to end up with the same thing for the most part.
Right. And then what are you listening to now? What are some beat makers that you're inspired by today?
To tell you the truth, I haven't been listening lately to a whole lot of you know, just beat makers or hip hop in general. Actually, I haven't listened to quite a bit. I've been listening to the homie that I started making beats with, Rec. He put out a you know, quite a few beat tapes lately, or instrumental stuff. So I've been listening to some of his stuff, and I've been listening to some stuff that the homie Andrew Lozano has been doing. But I've been also listening to some like very random stuff. Like let me look up this this lady's name real quick. It's one of my favorite albums recently. Her name is Arushi Jain, and it's like a classical Indian mixed with like modular synth album or something.
Whoa.
And it's phenomenal. Like, from beginning to end, it's like kind of like takes you on a journey. So I've kind of been listening to some, you know, very, I don't know, unordinary stuff lately. I kind of like listening to like random things like that.
Yeah.
It kind of like leaves your mind open. Like, you aren't always thinking in the same context, and it kind of leaves you know, space in your mind to create, rather than, you know, leaning back on the same sound.
That's awesome. I love a good suggestion. I'm gonna have to check that out. And the last question is, what does the future hold for RJ?
I mean, you know, I got a lot of stuff in the works right now. I really don't have any set plans necessary. You know, I just want to put out creative projects, and, you know, put out things that, you know, I'm proud of, and work with some people that, you know, I want to work with, and that I respect what they're putting out. And, you know, I just want to like grow as a musician and as a producer, and have fun with it. Because you know, in the end, you know, I want to look back on stuff and be like, oh, like, I'm really proud of the work that I put in. And you know, and just keep being inspired and keep working, you know, as long as I can, as long as the fire burns.
RJ, thanks a lot for coming on to Very Dope Producers. This was an amazing conversation. I think all of your work is amazing as well. So I just want to thank you again for spending time with me.
Thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it, and I enjoyed the talk. It was fun.
All right, man. All right, peace.
Peace.